Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Hardware Podcast. I'm Jackson Danner with my good friend Omar. Man, last week we were bragging on kickers kicking like impressive NFL length field goals, and this week we're going to be talking about one that missed a game-winning extra point with an injured quarterback. You can't be doing that.
Yeah, no, yeah, that game was pretty much the game of the week, aside from Jackson State, Alabama State, and that's a game that I'll imply it a bit. I had a lot of stake in if you've been following this podcast throughout the spring season, and it was quite the emotional journey. That fourth quarter and everything that followed it.
You know what? The that VMI defense is a huge letdown because we've been doing nothing but bragging about them on our Buck Buchanan portion of these episodes, and man, they really let us down with Samford.
I mean, well, Sanford's been putting up points on the rest of the SoCon throughout
Fair
the
enough.
season, and yeah, we found out that Liam Welch. I mean, that man. It's no joke. I mean, if you followed Sanford football, even Steelers football, the past couple of years, you know the name Devlin Hodges. Liam Welch might just be better. I mean, it might be a hot take, and I might be a layman, but he just might be better.
We're not even 2 minutes in, Omar. Like let's save the hot takes for just a little bit later on in the episode. We got to give the people something to look forward to. So
I'll explain myself.
yeah, let's just go ahead and hop into this Walter Payton Award race. Do you want to start us off?
Yeah, sure. For me, really no change in like my top guy. Eric Schmid again continuing to tear it up out in the Southland like this week with hapless Lamar. That game was over quickly. Schmid had 4 rushing touchdowns. He threw for over 300. I mean, the game was over quickly, like I said, but he had 4 rushing touchdowns. And when you think of like a quarterback having like 4 rushing touchdowns, you think of like a really elusive guy, but he only had like 30 or so rushing yards, and he's not a big guy like Colin Klein or Tim
Not
Tebow,
at all.
just
No.
jamming it in. So Schmid's my top guy still. I would have put Barrier first. I'm not sure if that's one of your guys, Jackson, but he just didn't play last week. I think it was a COVID postponement or cancellation. So
Something like that. Yeah, I didn't have him on the list for this week, but it's certainly on my radar. Something that I find interesting with Eric Schmid is that he didn't have a rush TD this year, and he only had 5 in his career at Sam Houston State, and he had 4 in this one game. Like, you don't think of this guy as like a dual threat quarterback by any means, and he had managed to put up 4 and threw for 2 touchdowns. It's not like he did just everything on the ground. And he did have that 1 interception, but anytime you put up 6 TDs, that's very forgivable. So I might mention the last quarterback or the last player at all to win the Walter Payton Award back to back was from Sam Houston State in 2016, 2017, Jeremiah Briscoe, who hasn't amounted to much as a professional football player, only 2 career pass attempts in the CFL. But he did win 2 Walter Payton Awards in this time in college. So, hey, you got to hand it to him. We could see that with Eric Schmid, but he's got to win one first. So,
geez, spare the shade, Jackson. Oh my goodness. Oh man. He, all I know is he's thrown 2 more CFL passes than we have, and that's enough
you know
respect on
what?
my part.
I wasn't saying I could do it, but yeah,
Yeah,
no, but he did win 2 back to backs, which is 2 more than I'll ever have. So,
yeah, and me too.
yeah.
I mean, my eligibility is not run out if I ever go to grad
Hey,
school. I'm just playing.
hey,
I'm just
you
messing
can
around.
swing it. Why not?
I'm not Ed Bundy from Married with Children. I'm not Ed Bundy, not peaking in high school. But Jackson, who was your first guy? If it wasn't Schmid, who was your first guy?
Schmid was my first guy, but my next guy is Cameron Ward, a quarterback from Incarnate Word, in a 56-45 win. He threw 26 for 47, which is okay, but 407 yards, 6 throwing touchdowns, and 1 rush touchdown. And so far, I mean, I don't think we've talked about him thus far, but so far this year, he's played in 3 games, a little over 1,000 yards, 16 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. He's a freshman. He's got 2 relatives in the NFL. He's been killing it over there in Incarnate Word. So he's been doing pretty well. And anytime you have 7 touchdowns, no interceptions, that's something that with only 3 games played, like you can definitely get on our radar at least.
Yeah, so I will say this, with Incarnate Word, the Southland race, and for that matter, the Walter Payton race, probably will heat up later on in this spring season, especially this week, because who does Incarnate Word play? Nicholls State. That can either be a rebound game for Nicholls State, and we'll talk about our games to watch later on, but I think that's a great point with this Incarnate. I'm sorry, I lost his name. The Incarnate Word quarterback.
Cameron Word.
Cameron Word.
Ward.
Like, is
Ward.
it okay? I was about to say, like, that's fitting. Word, it's fitting. Shoot, my mistake. They don't play. Actually, that was last week. Sorry. Yeah, they do play Nicholls this week. I don't know. I was looking at last week's schedule for whatever reason. Yeah, so 12 o'clock UIW versus Nicholls.
Noon Eastern on ESPN.
But huge
Plus.
game.
We'll get into that later.
Big noon kickoff. Spring FCS style.
Yeah, spring FCS style. Big noon kickoff, but it's FCS, but it's on ESPN Plus, but it's Incarnate Word at Nicholls State. Yeah, you know who I'm pulling for in that one.
Oh man, you spent money on the shirt. Jeez.
It wasn't much money, and it was before the loss. In my defense.
No, that's good. That's good. You got to keep that energy, man. You know, God forbid they play a paycheck game against Florida or Baylor, Jackson.
Yeah,
I mean, that's all I got to say. God forbid that
then I wouldn't be wearing it. He had a great game. And, 16 total touchdowns in 3 games. You know, we'll talk about him. We'll keep an eye on him. I added it to my spreadsheet. So
yeah, for sure. On that note, so I'm gonna skip barriers. I mentioned before, we didn't play last week. I think they are playing this week as well. Let me check their later game. They're playing this week, so hopefully Barrier gets back on track, or Barriere. So my third guy, another quarterback, and again, we've mentioned so many times before, is a quarterback award, but Liam Welch, and we talked about him in the beginning. 570 yards against VMI, that VMI defense that we touted. And on the year, it's not like he just showed up for that VMI game. He's got 1,493 passing yards in 4 games and 3 300-yard games. And I think the one game he didn't throw for 300, he threw for 299 or like something close to it. So Liam Welch can sling the ball. He's been doing it a while. But the one downside to Liam Welch is his defense, they just don't show up to play. The Sanford defense just does not come out to play. That's why this team's 2-3, and that might be a hurdle for him. He can put up all the yards in the world, but I don't think if that Bulldogs team ends up at 500, I'm not sure he'll get much love for the award. And that's wrong or not. I just think that's the nature of, I guess, Player of the Year awards, and especially in a year when the FCS is getting so much attention and whatnot.
Yeah, that's going to be difficult to get on the radar of these voters and to be able, because it's just not many players that play on below 500 teams end up winning these things. It's just reality. It's not necessarily fair. He's not on the defense. He's not coaching it. Like, it's not his fault. But and he's putting up the points to win 2 games at least. But that's something that it's a lose-lose at that, because you don't get the credit. You don't get any of that.
I will say this, they do play Citadel this week. So maybe that's what the defense needs to play, that triple option of Citadel and run it up quick. Like, Citadel needs some stops early on in that game, or else like it will get ugly. Like I hate to say it. I love the triple option, but we both know the triple option can't play from behind, especially the numbers that Liam Welch is putting up.
It cannot play from behind. So that is truth. My next guy, I'm going to go with Joe Fagnano, a quarterback from Maine. In a 35-19 win at Stony Brook, put up 19 for 29, 4 touchdowns, 250 yards, and another rushing touchdown. He had a very bad first game versus Delaware, but he's gotten better in almost every category both weeks since then. 3 games played, 10 touchdowns, 560 yards. So nothing that'll wow you. Still yet to throw an interception, but if he keeps this improvement rate going, he's someone that we could definitely be talking about.
Yeah, and I mean, for me, I just think that first game, 61 passing yards, and I'm sure the advanced
It's
metrics
tough to
didn't like him
overcome.
either.
It's
Yeah,
tough to overcome, but if he keeps going for 5 touchdowns a game, it's possible.
yeah, it's possible. I mean, yeah, so we'll just have to see. The CAA is again a really quality conference. Delaware looks like the front runner though, along with James Madison. And look at the schedule for Maine, who they got. They probably won't play James Madison due to geography. Like they got Nova, who lost to, I forget who they lost to, but I know they got upset their first week of the year. Or was it Stony? It might have been Stony Brook that upset Villanova, and then they got Rhode
I know
Island,
we talked about
New
Nova's
Hampshire.
quarterback, the transfer. I forget his name, but
Yeah, let me look at the schedule really quick for that. But yeah, Nova got upset, so like that's definitely another week for Fagnano. Okay, they lost to Rhode Island, so they have 3 games left. Yeah, so they have 3 games: Villanova, Rhode Island, which could be a tough game, in New Hampshire, which, I mean, middling CAA team. So yeah, maybe Fagnano's trajectory's up. We'll see. It's kind of hard when Delaware is beating the brakes off a lot of good teams, and James Madison is James Madison, the brand of the CAA. But Fagnano out there in Orono, Maine, gotta love it. More than just lobster out there.
gotta have some good football up there, right? It's about time. So who's your next guy?
So my next guy, now I'm going into like my sleepers, because those are my 3 front runners. Those 3 quarterbacks that are really putting up numbers. Lindsey Scott, I'm sorry, maybe if he has an amazing game against UIW,
he's gonna have to have a big time comeback, and he's capable.
Yeah.
But we'll see if he actually can pull it off.
Yeah, because that's a big game in the Southland, and like that can be very well be a sort of playoff game for one of those at-large spots, since it's just 5.
Right.
Yeah, it's a playoff game. Like now we're sort of like kind of seeing it. It's like an FBS type flow where like you lose a game, it's like double elimination essentially.
Right. I mean, we run into this every March with football playoffs. It happens.
Yeah. I mean, not the past 2
March. The trouble is we never get to the playoffs.
Yeah, we never do.
Leagues, but anyways.
Yeah, I'm sure they do in the arena football leagues that exist, but they're just regional in nature, all those arena leagues.
Hey, we're gonna get our first sidetrack of the day. Have you bought your White Aces FCF championship shirt yet?
No, I have not. I
don't think that's the team I joined. Have you bought your FCF couch yet?
No, maybe when I finally move in my new place and the price is a bit lower, maybe I'll buy my FC. That amazes me that they have brand new couches like that. That truly amazes me.
That would be really great. If you have a girl over, you'll be like, "This is my FCF couch."
Real. And then she leaves. And then she'll leave.
Yeah. All right, moving on to your sleepers.
So yeah, now I'm going on with sleepers. Those 3 quarterbacks look like the front runners for me for this award. I mean, just in terms of consistency and just like mind-boggling numbers. But I got 2 running backs for sleepers. I'm not sure if our guy Otis is still on your radar, Jackson, but they don't feed Otis the ball.
Not very. Like he actually didn't have a terrible game. Like I think he was at like 10 yards a carry, but he just didn't get into the end zone, and it was ugly. Like, your sort of hope that you had with that interception, or I think it was even 2 in the very beginning, and then it just went downhill from there, and it wasn't exactly great to begin with.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, I have Otis Weah. I think he is right now, along with Brian Sneed. Sneed didn't play last week. He's still on the radar, too. But I think Otis Weah, with 7.5 yards a carry, he's explosive, efficient, 570 yards, 7 touchdowns, averaging over 100 yards a game, 115 actually. Like they just got to give Otis the ball, but it's a balanced attack, and it's not really his fault he's not getting the ball as much because he is efficient as heck. But that's the first guy on my sleeper list in terms of running backs.
He's not a Jarrett Patterson where you can just keep handing him the ball and it's no issue and he's going to produce. Like he's been struggling in that North Dakota State game, and they did have a good defense, but they had a very well-rounded defense. But yeah, he's gonna, for a running back to win this award, you have to be productive week in and week out.
I mean, he's still at 129 though. Like,
yeah.
He only had 16 carries though. Like maybe that's why North Dakota fell behind. I mean, well, you watched the game, so you can tell me more than I could. But I mean, 13 carries. That's all the Otis Weah got against the Bison. Like, that's ridiculous. I mean, you
Yeah.
see he's producing, you know?
Now it's hard to come back from behind in the running game, but
Yeah.
if you had stuck with it maybe throughout, through the end of the first half at least, maybe it would have looked a little.
Yeah, they got to feed him. Like, I mean, I love the running game. I know they're behind, but yeah, like that's just one obstacle in terms of Otis Way. It's strange, like he's just not getting the ball.
Yeah, for sure. I guess I'll go with my next guy who's also within that game, Hunter Luke, fullback from North Dakota State in that 34-13 win. It was his first game back off of injury. He had 28 carries, 190 yards, and 3 touchdowns. He has big play potential. He was killing it. And if he keeps that up, he's someone that I think voters love because it's a fullback. Fullbacks are fun.
Yeah, is he a fullback or is he a big running back, Jackson? Because I mean, I didn't know about him before this game.
On NDSU's website, he's listed as a fullback.
Oh heck yeah! No, I love it. Then I love it too. So, yeah, with the way Zeb Nolan's playing, no offense to him, he's taking more of a game managing sort of, I guess, style to his play, much different than Trey Lance. So if North Dakota State runs with or leans on the run game, leans on guys like Lupke, who, as far as we know, he could be the number one guy now after having that breakout game. Seems like a stereotypical like Midwestern player. Seems like a very stereotypical. Seems like a very stereotypical like Midwestern like big back. So we'll just see with Lupke for sure. So moving on to my next guy in terms of running backs. This is the guy I like, and Jackson's got to attend to something really quick. So I'm going to talk about Coy Williams really quick out of Davidson, who had 327 yards in 3 games for the Davidson Wildcats. And Davidson runs like a shotgun option scheme, and for those of you that know schemes very well, and he's back. So I was just saying my next guy was Coy Williams out of Davidson, a guy who's had 327 yards in 3 games, good average. And this past week against Presbyterian, a good Presbyterian team, 131 yards and 3 touchdowns. He's a bigger back, and they run shotgun options. So think like Tulane with Willie Fritz, like especially earlier in that scheme, and New Mexico too, when Bob Davie was a coach and they ran option out of the gun too, and Georgia Southern. They're that type of team, and here's why I like Coy Williams, because in a couple weeks, not this next weekend, I think they have this week, they play Morehead State. Should be an easy game, but the following week they got San Diego, and San Diego's in the midst of their 40-game Pioneer Football League win streak. And to me, this first couple weeks, like San Diego hasn't looked that great. Like we had that we talked about a little bit last week with that Drake game where Drake only had 25 yards of offense, but only lost by 3.
Right.
And this past week they only it was, I think, up to the 4th quarter, the score of the Butler San Diego game, and this Butler team went 1-11 last year. Where they were 49-point underdogs, I think, to North Dakota State, a game I went to Labor Day weekend at the Twin Stadium. But they just weren't good. They were 1-11 last year, and the San Diego team should be blowing them out. I mean, just put all the pieces together. Option team, good defense of Davidson, you might have an upset there. So and Coy Williams could be at the forefront of that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's someone that we can definitely add to our radar for sure. And those are a couple great sleepers there. I think that was all we had for the Walter Payton. I do want to ask you: is Mark Gronowski out as a competitor for the Walter Payton Award?
I think so. He's just not really consistent. Like it seems like we're talking like up and down.
Yeah, his last 2 games have been terrible. His first 3 games, he had 11 total touchdowns, 2 interceptions. His last 2 games, 4 total touchdowns, and an under 50% completion rate. It's just in 2 games, 221 passing yards. That's not going to cut it.
But he's doing the job punting the ball. Had a 48-yard boot against Youngstown State, so he's doing the job kicking the ball. I'll say that.
Hey, a little dual threat, I guess. I don't know. I think he's had too many. There are too many other guys that are just playing too well.
And I mean, maybe he's not as refined as a passer. And this might make you angry to bring up this Heisman race, 2001, Eric Crouch, because Gronowski's got 200-yard rushing games. He's got 6 rushing touchdowns. Passing the ball, though, he's struggling a bit, but he's doing just enough. So, I mean, maybe it's like an Eric Crouch type situation where they don't run option, but a run-first quarterback with not much, I guess, passing. I don't want to insult him, but I guess passing stats with has a chance at the award. And I know Rex Grossman got screwed. I know after this you're going to berate me about Rex Grossman in 01, but that's my comparison.
We don't talk about the 2001 Heisman race.
So. He deserved it. The option got its credit. The option deserved all the credit that it got from that Heisman race.
A little bit more than it deserved, but you on that. I know you're an option guy. We'll go ahead. Who's your first guy for the Buck Buchanan?
So my first guy, I found it kind of hard. So I had to like step back from VMI because we've been touting this VMI defense all season, but they end up giving up 570 passing yards to Liam Welch. He had very comfortable pockets almost all game, except towards the end when they got a key sack to get the ball back and tie the game when they should have won the game in regulation, but they missed extra point. So I'm going to lay off on – no, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. It's bad when you're bragging on a team one week and then you're talking about, like, their opponent being on the Walter Payton Award. That's the next week. It's not a good indicator that you're playing a great defense.
I'd say like, keep them on the radar, but they kind of got exposed, to say the least. I mean, like, I don't know what else to say, but just that performance exposed him, honestly. I mean, Riddle's still doing great, like, through no fault of Riddle's. He's got 8.5 tackles for a loss, so he's still a candidate, I'd say. But it's a closer race, I think, now. Like, I got 2 guys interchangeable. You probably have them both, James Caxar and Jackson Hankey, both linebackers out of North Dakota State with high tackle totals. I give the edge to Caxar and Hankey because it's North Dakota State, it's the brand, and VMI kind of got exposed. Meaning, like, and I'm not saying they're a bad defense, but it's an uphill battle in terms of these individual honors because VMI hasn't had a winning year since '81. People are looking at it's like, oh, VMI. I mean, with the cool cadet uniforms and stuff. Not the football program, right? The cadets, right. Or Keydets, the Keydets. That's what people think.
Yeah, no, you don't think when you think, man, I'm in the mood to watch some great FCS football. You don't think of VMI. That is not names that comes up on the top of your list. So, man, I'm going to go with a guy who's had a very quiet but great season. Isaiah Chambers, a defensive lineman out of McNeese State. He had 5 tackles for a loss, 2 of them which were sacks and 2 quarterback hurries. In 5 games played, he's had 14 solo tackles, 10.5 tackles for a loss, and almost 5 sacks. He's been killing it.
Yeah, I mean, front 7 word, a guy that disrupts. And the Southland, I don't think McNeese is a contender. Like, you got UIW, Incarnate Word. You have Nichols, and of course the front runner Sam Houston, and even like Southeastern Louisiana was ranked for a period of time. So the Southland's wide. It's not exactly wide open, but McNeese is kind of in the middle of the pack there. So I think it's hard, but again, front 7 award, and it's close. Like, really, anyone that puts up stats, I think, can win this award. It's not like a year. It's not like, I guess, you think of the Bednarik Award, right, Jackson? Like, guys, like, you always think about like these team leader linebackers because they're on TV all the time. Like, I mean, the guy that stood out to me the most, excuse me for being a group of 5 guy, but Tyler Matakevich, 2015. Like, you thought about that resurgent Temple team that took Notre Dame down to the wire on Saturday Night Football. You think, yeah, Tyler Matakevich. That's the face you attach to it. Now, that just might be FCS football where it's like, okay, you have we got ballers here, but the games aren't like really in prime spots. Like, there's hardly any primetime spots that aren't competing with March Madness now. You don't like put teams to like, or faces to great teams or great, games. So.
Right. No, I totally get what you're saying. It is a very difficult race. It's very tight. One thing that we talked about before the show was like, all the guys we've talked about this year, none of them really performed this weekend. Now, some of those were postponements or bye weeks or whatnot, but like John McDonald, I think is his name. Like none of those guys really like performed all that well. Darius Curse, like none of them really had great games. And so I'm glad we're talking about some new blood in this, but this, I mean, you can't have like a 12-way race going into it. Like there's going to need to be front runners because we can't keep going on with like all these guys that have had so ones. My next guy, I'm going to go with a guy we actually did talk about last week, Jamani Crane, the defensive lineman from Jackson State. He did have 6 total tackles, a tackle for loss, and a forced fumble. He already had a really strong resume with that big man touchdown last week. But I mean, he played a lot better than some of the other top performers so far.
Yeah, you mentioned the big man touchdown. He's at least a favorite for the Heisman Award, spring edition.
Yeah, spring edition. Just add a spring. Well, you know, when you do like a what's it called, a sequel to a movie, and they'll add like, I don't know, like a piece of tape to the original logo. Just put spring.
That's a good one. I think I think that point we just made about putting faces to these great moments, like with Jackson State and HBCU football being put in the forefront on the linear ESPN2. Maybe like Jamani Crane becomes that like big face of FCS defense. And maybe that's what gets Jamani Crane the award. Maybe that's what it takes for the first HBCU winner since Rashean Mathis in 2003 of the Buck Buchanan Award. I know for sure.
Talk about screen time though for the FCS. Like typically only been the Dakotas and the MVFC. You're finally seeing it because of my man Dion.
Yeah, I mean, you owe most to him too, but I think people are recognizing there's an appetite for seeing these schools, and like the traditions is unmatched. A game we'll talk about later on is April 10th, Delaware State just got flexed to ESPN in primetime, which is huge, even though Delaware State has had nothing to write home to mother about since 2007. No, I mean,
we're just throwing shade at everyone.
I mean, no, like they haven't had a playoff appearance since 2007, and but I mean now the MEAC's closer because Florida A&M and Bethune-Cookman and NC-A&T have left, but it's huge that again equal airtime. That's what we wanted. That's what I wanted. I know you love Dion, but I want equal airtime for all the HBCUs.
Yeah, I want to see some of these other schools and bring attention to the other ones because, like, as awesome as Dion is for the sport and for the conference, I mean, for Jackson State, obviously, you want to see some of these other schools that also have rich traditions and not just have a fun-loving Barstool employee Hall of Famer head coach.
Yeah, I think we sort of like veered a lot with that. I got one more guy. Well, probably two. Like one guy I mentioned last week, Darius Curse. I'm going to keep him on there. It's like the D-back that could win it because maybe this is the year D-back wins it.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
All it's going on.
It's been a strange year. So
yeah.
Why not have a defensive back win it?
3 picks still, 22 tackles.
Game. So 3 picks, even though he didn't have one this game. Like that's still impressive over the course of 4 games.
Yeah, I'd say he needs a pick 6. Honestly, that could help him a lot if he gets a pick 6, or racks up return yards, interception return yards.
Third down, forced fumble, something like that.
Yeah, late in the game. So I got Curse my radar, but another guy I think could be a front runner, Nicario Harper, and I think this is just because Jacksonville State, the Gamecocks out in Jacksonville, Alabama. They played a fall slate. They played 3 games in the fall. They played North Alabama, Mercer, or 4 games, North Alabama, Mercer, almost beat Florida State. They're up on Florida State, which Jackson will celebrate. I feel like I mentioned that before, and I always mention that Jackson's gonna have a good chuckle about that. Jackson's probably gonna take this and take this clip and tweet at dudes who are or tag dudes who are down bad on the Instagram story and with Florida State.
Yes. Anything that's negative about Florida State for that sorry excuse for a school and a university, yes, I will take that every time.
Yeah, so I mean, just going back to my point, like Nicario Harper is a guy that's played 8 games already, and you look at that, it's like wow, that's a lot. So, he has 57 tackles, 2 picks. really like a leader on that defense. And that Jacksonville State team, probably because they're playing the Ohio Valley Conference, not much, I guess, football pedigree aside from Eastern Illinois every few years. I know Jimmy G led them to the promised land, not the title game, or not the title itself, but a title game a few years ago. But it's just not exactly like a power FCS conference. I mean, and those terms don't exist in FCS. But he's got 57 tackles in 8 games, and he has a chance to rack up 100. Let's see, I guess 4 weekends left in the season, 3 weekends, assuming they make the playoffs. He can rack up realistically 100 tackles with playoff games involved, and like that might be impressive enough for the voters to make Nicario Harper the 2020/2021 Walter Payton or Buck Buchanan winner.
What was the nice round number that was like headlined everywhere with Manti Te'o? I think it was with either interceptions or sacks. It was like 30 or like some ridiculous number. It was just nice. That was the headliner. Why is this linebacker in the Heisman race? 30 interceptions, or it wasn't that many, obviously, but it was something ridiculous like that. And that was like the headliner. A nice round number, like 100 tackles in this weird season would be like awesome for him. And definitely something that, can stick in when no one's like the prominent front runner, that could definitely like stick in voters' minds for sure. My next guy, I'm going to go with Jordan Lewis, a defensive end from Southern that we haven't talked about. He had 5 solo tackles, 3 tackles for loss. What I find interesting that in the team's total of 10 sacks for the whole year for Southern, he accounts for 6.5 of them. He's been like killing it in the backfield. In 3 games played, 13 solo tackles, 9.5 TFLs, and 1 forced fumble. He's just been he's been carrying that Southern front 4 on his back, it seems.
Yeah, and I mean the SWAC, it looks open, and I'm not sure if Southern plays Jackson State. I'm going to check that really quick. So maybe he can I think they do actually. I think he can steal some airtime and some attention, like Jamandi Crane. Actually, yeah, Easter weekend, 5 p.m. prime time coaching in prime time. Had to do it. Yeah, like he plays against Jackson State. So and of course too, April 17th, if Grambling doesn't shut down their season with the COVID issues they have. You got the Bayou Classic on NBC Sports Network, probably the last one ever broadcasted by the NBC family of networks. Really bittersweet time for a lot of people, including myself. But maybe he makes a splash out there in Shreveport.
You're not the first person to do that play on words, like back when he was at NFL Network, they would have Game Day Prime in prime time sponsored by Amazon Prime. Like that was the best right there. But yeah, no, he's had a great year, and I'm excited to see in these next like 4 weeks of the regular season. I'm excited to see like who these front runners will be and who these guys will emerge, because like defense and the running game are what emerges like late in the season. And I'm excited to see what particular defensive players really step up.
Yeah, so I got one last guy, and I don't think he's a realistic candidate. We talk about, I think maybe like we love these defenses on this podcast. We love VMI's defense. I love Drake's defense because the first 2 games they've absolutely balled out. Like they kept, you remember the offense in the Water Boy, Guy Grenoir and the boys, probably the most inept offense ever. That's what Drake had against San Diego with 25 yards of offense, yet this defense still kept him in the game. And the ringleader of that defense is Ryan Criseri, who, fun fact, in 2019 was an all PFL honorable mention as a long snapper. And here he is on defense making plays. He's got 23 tackles in 2 games. 13 tackles in 2 games and 4 tackles for a loss, all came against San Diego, that great program. And they held Valparaiso, the Crusaders, to 6 points in this past week. And I'm going to pull out a Drake line because it's Drake. I got to figure out which one's appropriate to put on. But I mean, you look at this guy and it's like, like he steps up in line and he's like, if you got a problem, you got to walk around it. I used to say I had it before I got it. Now I got it all. And being honest, I don't really want to talk about it. And if I didn't have it, wouldn't want to sulk about it. I had it so long, I don't even celebrate it. Yeah, he's got the swagger, man. He's got that lemon
If
peppers
this whole
freestyle
army
swagger.
thing doesn't work out, you can just rap. You can be a Drake impersonator.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I want to get called corny for this. They're going to call me corny for doing that, but I had to do it, because it's Drake. But that defense, they don't play this week versus Stetson because of COVID, but really an elite defense, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely, and someone that we can keep talking about. And hey, long snappers turn defensive stars are people too. So, we love our special teams on this show. Yeah, man. Moving on to kind of some talking points. What were your thoughts on the whole? Because we hyped this matchup up as everyone did. North Dakota State, the top two in the MVFC. And it just fell flat and quickly. What were kind of like your thoughts on that game and the MVFC as a whole?
Don't count out the Bison. Simple as that.
And it's strange we have to say this considering they've won like 99 out of the past 100 championships, it seems like.
But I counted them out. Yeah, like they got blown up by Southern Illinois. I counted them out. I mean, I'm guilty. Yeah. That was a cold take.
Yeah. I did too. And they're not going anywhere. And they just got arguably their best player back. So.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. So, it looked like North Dakota was the best team in the MVFC. And it looks like that North Dakota State took that title right back. Maybe it's Southern Illinois.
Snatched it from them. Like, it was not subtle passing of the torch. Like, they took and ran with it, literally.
Yeah, I still think North Dakota's going to get an at-large. Like, a bunch of the at-large bids will go to the MVFC. But, I mean, that blowout loss didn't help their cause. I mean, you'd want it to be close. It's like when Notre Dame got blown out by Clemson in the conference championship game.
Yeah, but that was Notre Dame. We knew that was going to happen. We didn't know that was going to happen. So, for all of you who are confused, I hate Notre Dame and Florida State. So,
I didn't know you hated Notre Dame. I had no clue about that one. That's a shock
really
to
not?
me. No, that's a shock to me.
Oh, really? No.
Still mad about the 92 Sugar Bowl? Is that what it is? Still mad about the 92 Sugar Bowl?
No, they're just overrated every year, and everyone's shocked when they lose 63-2 semifinals. It's like
they mean so much to the history of college football that they demand your respect. That's my stance on Notre Dame. And I'm a historian. I'm a history major, so it's a very warranted stance.
They changed college football. There's no doubt about that, but that shouldn't get them into the playoff every year. Is my opinion.
Would you rather have A&M? No, that was the other option. Would you rather have A&M in the playoff?
Oh boy.
I rest my case.
Know what would happen with that? We knew what was going to happen with Notre Dame.
We knew.
Yeah.
Well, we already knew because Bama beat A&M. They boat raced them early in the year.
If Marco Wilson doesn't throw a shoe, Florida can go in that 4 spot last year. But anyway.
Sorry, I got to touch my cap on that cap, my friend. Yeah, I got to touch my cap on that one.
So with this Jackson State loss, did you get a chance to see what Dr. Donald Hill, their head coach, Alabama State's head coach, that press conference? We kind of threw some shade.
I heard about it. He's like, we're not going to let Deion Sanders just run through the SWAC, and that he's right.
It's quote, you all hear the hype that was coming out of Jackson. We're just this small school in Montgomery. They said we don't know how to coach in black colleges. Let them go back to Jackson, soak in some Epsom salts, and send me my shoe back. Which I don't get the shoe comment, but I mean they were clearly not very happy with all the.
Yeah, and I think that's good attitude. I think that's how they're all feeling. It's like, yeah, we're on ESPN. It's like they feel like that they're the cannon fodder. It's like you have an emerging UFC fighter or boxer coming up. And you have this guy with a subpar record. And the only reason that he's there is so he can get beat by the young contender. And that's sort of what's going on in this SWAC each week with bam, Mississippi Valley State blown out on ESPN on a Sunday. They probably expect the same thing to happen too with the Hornets of Alabama State. Didn't happen. And people are like, okay, the SWAC's got some sauce in them, and which it always and just wait till Florida A&M and Bethune-Cookman join. That's a mega conference.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And what it's looking like is Arkansas, Pine Bluff, and Jackson State. Do you think Jackson State still wins that game handily? Do you think it's a competition? Do you think they're in it at all?
I think it'll be tight because Pine Bluff really they embarrassed Grambling, which Grambling's got some stuff to figure out. Broderick Fobbs is on the hot seat. After
They
two
seem to have
straight.
some identity issues.
Yeah, that too. Like I think they've gone through two offensive coordinators this season. Like
Really?
they
I
just
did
fired
not
their
know
second
that.
one. Yeah,
Wow.
I think that's what happened. But yeah, like they're 0-3. It's just not the Grambling that you envision with guys like Doug Williams, Bruce Eugene, who we talked about aside from the podcast, even Devontae Kincaid on that 2016 Celebration Bowl champion team. Like this isn't the Grambling that we know, and maybe Arkansas Pine Bluff is just really good, and we'll see that on Saturday. But who are we to know?
For such a historic program, you hate for it to see like it go down like this, but we'll see if they can bounce back. And who does Grambling play next? Because they're off this week, correct?
They're off the next 2 weeks because of COVID, so they're
Oh,
on pause right
okay.
now. So the
Oh,
Bayou
geez.
Classic's in danger. So
Maybe I'll give
hopefully that
them a
happens.
chance to kind of figure out what they need to do to move on from here. Uh,
Yeah.
they need that time for sure. So, but yeah, I mean, our next talking point was VMI Sanford. We already kind of addressed it a little bit. Do you think VMI bounces back this week, or not bounces back? Do you think they can keep going?
Yeah, so they struggle with the passing game out in Sanford. They seem to thrive against teams with good running backs like Devin Wynn of Furman. They seem to bottle him up, him and Hamp system up at week 1 against Fordham. So and Wofford historically runs the ball. Right now they run a shotgun option attack, and that's right up VMI's alley. You likely won't see Wofford throwing for 570 or even close to it. I think they threw for under 100 this past week or something like that. But this is a team that traditionally likes to run the ball, so I think they bounce back. But who knows? VMI is not looking so invincible now.
It seems like kind of a trap game because Wofford is 1-2, VMI is 4-0, and looks great on paper. Udensky kind of got beat up last week pretty bad. I mean, it was visibly limping in the fourth quarter and in overtime. They had a poor special teams performance, obviously. It just seems it seems like a trap game to me. And I think if VMI is going to lose anytime in the next couple of weeks, I think it could very easily be this game.
Well, I think. Oh, sorry.
I was just gonna say for those of you who are interested, it's 1 Eastern on ESPN Plus this Saturday. But yeah, it's what were you gonna go to?
I was just gonna say if they win this game, they clinch their first winning record since '81. So I think the players have a lot to prove, and I don't think it will be a letdown. Of course, they kind of got a smoother slate looking at the rest of the way. Except for Chattanooga if that game gets rescheduled, which I don't think the SoCon's going to reschedule that one because both teams would be in contention for FCS berth. But yeah, that's a good point where it could be a letdown game and that sort of emotional high of just getting by Sanford in overtime could, wear this team out. So yeah, no, I mean, I think they do get back on track though because just the style of play with Sanford Sanford found their weakness.
Yeah, definitely they did, and I mean everyone's gonna go after that weakness. No,
Yeah.
kind of the blueprint of, and they did end up winning that game, but you haven't seen VMI struggle like they did last week. That's obviously one of them. What are some of your other games to watch this weekend?
So yeah, I'm gonna lay off the VMI train. I mean, of course, I'll still be watching them. Earlier today, I did a podcast on the Ram Crusader Cup. Holy Cross plays again against Fordham in a very venerable rivalry that's also been played in Bermuda. I forgot to mention the last time we talked about it. It's also been in Bermuda too, which is cool, but that's not the game I'm going for. I'm going to go with San Diego at Presbyterian at 11 a.m. And Presbyterian hasn't been great this year. They almost beat Gardner-Webb in overtime, a solid Gardner-Webb team that we don't really know what to think of. They've only played 2 games against Presbyterian and Elon. But this game is 11 a.m., 8 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific time for San Diego. So this could be a spot for an upset. And like I said, San Diego hasn't looked that impressive. So I'm going to put San Diego on upset alert. odd start. Maybe that's why they started at 11 a.m. because they knew about the whole body clocks thing.
Well, I mean, this is in the NFL, but whenever a West Coast based team plays on the road on the East Coast at 1 Eastern time, I think like 68% of the time the home team wins on the East Coast team. And it's because like you're playing at 9 a.m. for that, and this is only earlier and for a more inexperienced team, obviously, for a bunch of pros. So yeah, this will be that's an interesting game to watch. My game, we've already kind of gone over Incarnate Word and Nicholls State. Incarnate Word being 3-0, Nicholls State being 3-1, coming off of that bye week with a loss. Lindsey Scott, this is a make or break week, and Incarnate Word is yet to score less than 40 points, so they can put up points. There's no debate about that. My game I'm going to go with instead is Alabama State at Arkansas Pine Bluff. ASU coming off of that huge win versus Jackson State. Arkansas Pine Bluff, it's 2-0, first place in the SWAC West. So I'm excited to see how that goes.
Yeah, like I'm excited too. Like Pine Bluff, I think they've won maybe 1 or 2 SWAC titles, but nothing in a while. Never been to the Celebration Bowl. I'm gonna go with a little bit of surprise. There's a lot of good games in Big Sky. Bucknell is playing. So maybe there's a chance for me to get out from rock bottom if Bucknell goes wins the conference championship. But I'm gonna go with Sunday afternoon, the NEC flex game to ESPN3, one of two flex games for the conference. Duquesne at Bryant, and so the NEC has been under the radar. They play the games on Sunday afternoons, and we talked about I think I forget his name, but his last name is Chestnut at the back for Sacred Heart.
Yeah, I remember. We talked about what is his name? I've got it right here. Let's see. Julius Chestnut from Sacred Heart, 7 touchdowns in 3 games. He's been killing it.
Yeah, so like we talked about him, but like they've been really under the radar, and that's the NEC's not a great football conference, but if Bryant wins, they'll be in prime position to put themselves in the NEC title game and in position for their first playoff bid. But they have to beat a 3-0 Duquesne team that has been the class of the NEC. And another added element is this conference has the potential to have 4 teams behind Duquesne at 2-2 out of 6 teams, which is amazing. And the scenario has to play out like this. This weekend, Sacred Heart has to lose to Wagner, and then Wagner wins their makeup game against Merrimack. Wagner and Sacred Heart are 2-2, and I have an article dropping tomorrow morning about this. Bryant loses to Duquesne. Bryant ends at 2-2, and LIU beats Merrimack this weekend, and Merrimack loses, of course, their makeup. LIU, Long Island U, ends at 2-2. So this has kind of a Week 17 wild card race feel, like it's kind of cool. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot at stake, a lot to play for, and that's strange. The 4 2-2 teams out of 6 that could possibly show up. That would be awesome. Yeah, and that you said that's on ESPN3 on Sunday afternoon, right?
ESPN3, one of 2 flex games the conference has this spring season.
Nice, that's awesome. Yeah, I'm excited to see that, and I love that the FCS is spreading this out over all the weekend for those of us who would rather watch football than March Madness. I'm excited to see that. So for sure.
Yeah. So I don't know if you have any more games for this weekend. I mean, looking at it, it's not really much. I mean, you have your players to watch, like Eric Berry.
It's a letdown compared to last week when we had 1 versus 2, 3 versus 4 in the NBFC. I mean, there was a lot to look forward to last week, and it was anticlimactic. We had a couple games to make up for it that we didn't expect in ASU, Jackson State, obviously Sanford nearby.
I will add this one. So it's the last game for us. Cal Poly at Eastern Washington. Cal Poly got absolutely whipped last week against Cal Davis. Dan Hawkins, former Boise State and Colorado coach, is coaching at Cal Davis. They dropped 66 on the Mustangs. And who's playing? Who are they playing against this week? Eric Barrier and the Eastern Washington Eagles. So Barrier can put up some yards in the first half. Maybe he'll have 300 yards in the first half. Maybe.
Yeah,
I think that's very reasonable.
It's not a make or break game, but something that he could really get himself back in the running if Barrier performs well. So
Yeah, and I think that's all we have for games. Jackson, do you have anything else to add?
I don't. I think I'm all set, and man, I'm excited for another great week of football. I'm excited to see a Nicholls State bounce back. I'm excited for all this, so it'll be fun. And man, I've got to ask you, I guess, one last question. To win it all, to win the FCS championship this year, would you take NDSU or the field?
I'm sorry, I got distracted by someone yelling outside the room.
You're fine. So to win the FCS championship this year, would you take NDSU or the field right now?
I think NDSU because they got the experience.
Yeah, I was
I
gonna
think
say I've got the postseason experience. They know how to win in, I was about to say December, but they know how to win in the postseason. So
yeah.
I'm excited to see that. We did see, I forget. I wish I had written it down. We did see one team opt out of the rest of the spring season.
Illinois State.
Illinois State, that's right. For some of these teams that have had disappointing years, do you think they're going to end up doing that? Is that going to be a trend we see in the next coming weeks?
Maybe Grambling, because they legitimately have COVID-19 problems, and like the season's not going as they planned, and it's reasonable because I mean the team's got COVID now, so
Right.
maybe, but I don't really see it. Like it's good exposure for the universities.
When else are you going to get a chance to not have to compete with the NFL, with FBS? You know, when are you gonna see the opportunity? So it's not a smart decision unless you have big COVID issues and health issues like that, and identity and coaching issues, just all kinds of issues scrambling.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I don't think it'll be a trend, and I'd hope not because it's kind of hypocritical. You know, like
Right.
I think I'm all for player safety, especially in this pandemic, but I think it's kind of shameful for Iowa State to, after going 1-3, to kind of opt out, you know, when if they were like 4-0, you know, they'd still be in it. So it's kind of hypocritical.
Right. For sure. Well, yeah, I'm excited for that. And I think that's all we have. No FCF preview this week because Wild Aces won it last week. But man, I'm excited for this great week of football. And I'm sure we'll talk next week.
Yeah, for sure. I'm looking forward to it already. Got a busy week, but I'll tune in when I can, especially to see my Satyrs hopefully beat the Rams. And I will say this, I'm excited because the first college football game I went to in person with my dad was Holy Cross Fordham in 2006 at Old Fitton Field. The game that was on ESPNU, actually, as I found out later on. So that was pretty cool.
Nice.
Yeah.
That is awesome. Better than my first game. My first was when Ron Zook got fired at Mississippi State. So better than that.
Definitely. Anything's better than that.
Yeah.
So until next time, you know, enjoy the football and peace, love, and soul, everyone.
Go Nicholls.